Hey, welcome back, my crypto comics compatriots. So, today we're doing a special how to, and this one is brought to you by our good friend Shaun Keenan from Comics to Movies. How you doing?
Good, mate. I'm going to say I never get sick of that intro. I absolutely love that intro. Every time I see it, I'm like, man, I love it. Like, gets me fired up. I'm like, yeah, let's do comics.
Yeah, Fry did a really good job putting that one together. I love it. Love it.
Uh,
Um, so today you're actually going to be talking about kind of how to protect your IP. That's a pretty big topic that it doesn't get much kind of light in the industry. Everybody's always talking about like, oh, I created this or I created that. Nobody's talking about how to protect it.
yeah, and I think especially with new creators, and I can say that I've had issues along the way myself, and I've been very open and honest about that, and that's because with indie creators, we scrape and we put a lot of our own money into certain
Mm-hmm.
things. So we usually forego paying certain things, thinking that that will save us money, but then in the long run, actually ends up and coming and biting us in the butt. And the biggest thing on that is having a proper contract. So whenever you're doing an IP, even if it's with a friend or family member, that you have a contract in place that is actually done by a lawyer and not something that you just pull off the internet. Because that's the other thing that we do as indie creators is, we're quite resourceful. So we'll grab something off the internet, we'll kind of, make our own adjustments. And then when it comes to the time that it gets in front of a judge or in the legal proceedings, that it just doesn't hold up type of thing.
Oh, okay. So I've actually used a couple of those in the past. Just creating a contract, find something online and readjust it, and yeah, it's never worked out for me so well, just because other issues along the way, like the artist would drop out or something like that, and I'm sitting there like, well, he still has my script, like, do I get it back? What's the deal? But yeah.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting, and I think because as you said at the top here, that we don't talk about it much, is that you actually don't know the questions to ask.
Mm-hmm.
So in this circumstance, so I've signed a deal with an artist. I've provided him with the script. Like, what do I if he decides to drop out? Like, where does that leave us? So do in all my contracts, I have what they call non-disclosure agreements, so that even if the person drops out, that they can't talk about the project, they can't show any of their artwork or anything like that without speaking to me first. And if they do, then they open themselves up to legal issues. So there's little things like that. But if you don't know to ask the question in the first place, how do you know to put that in a contract? And that's what a lawyer is really good for. And usually what you can kind of do, and what I've done is get the lawyer to do a template for me that then I can just kind of adjust, so I'm not having to go back and pay for a contract every single time I do a new
Yeah.
series. But I do have a template for a writer, a template for an artist, and then what we call a joint venture contract, which is when you're not paying someone and you're deciding to go into a property where you both have ownership of the IP.
Okay. So in those kind of circumstances, who's actually filing for like the patents or the copyright or the trademark or
So in the US and Australia, and a lot of the Western countries, as soon as something is printed, it's automatically copyrighted. So you actually don't need to pay for copyright. A lot of the things that you may need to copyright or trademark is things like the logo, so the design of the logo. If you've got a specific character, you might say, okay, well, this is my character. Here's his name and what he looks like. So but then there's ways kind of around that with, you know, the whole fan art type of thing or satire art. Like people can still use those designs as long as it's, you know, within what they call the fair use policy. So as much as you try to protect yourself, there will be people that kind of skirt and try and, you know, manipulate things into their own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, yeah, it's usually once something is printed, it's usually copyrighted by the person straight away that once it's in print. So then if anything else comes out like that, and that these are other things that people might not know is like, so when you're printing, you should have the month and the year that it's been printed, so that then you've got a legal document of your book saying, well, this is actually when it was printed, you know, blah, blah. So even if someone's come up with the same idea prior to you, but hasn't published and you've had no contact with them, it's like, well, sorry, mate, this person has published it on this date, and it's out there. You know, we now deem that you've copied his work, even though it might be, you know, not the case type of thing. So that's and that happens a lot, especially with creations, with especially with now with Facebook and those type of things. Like a lot of people might put up designs for their characters, and then, you know, 4 months later they see that a very similar design of their character in someone else's book. So that's a tricky situation in regards to those situations.
Okay. So, are you like actually filing for, you know, kind of the trademarks and stuff internationally?
So I haven't at the moment, just because it's so bloody expensive, so expensive. So the way trademarks work is if you say, you know, I've got my business brand, which is comics to movies, and then I've got my main title, XCT. So if I was going to trademark my logo for comics to movies, you then have to pick what you're trademarking it for. So it's not like you just go, oh, I've trademarked my logo. I've trademarked my logo for print. I've trademarked my logo for games. I've trademarked my logo for merchandise. And every time you select an extra category, that price jumps up considerably. So at this point in time, I haven't felt like it's worth the financial investment in regards to the trademark, which that means if someone did trademark comics to movies, then I would have to, you know, change my company name and everything like that. You know, the likelihood of that, I feel, isn't overly high, but you know, the good thing with America, Australia, and the United Kingdom, or most Western cultures, is that we've got very similar copyright laws from one country to another. And a lot of the times when you're going through a trademark or copyright, you can move that across to different countries. So you can say, okay, I want it in the UK, Australia, and the US. So you can pay for all three of them at the one time. The issue that arises in a lot of the Asian countries and stuff like that, they don't have copyright laws, and that's why you see a lot of the rip-off merchandise and all that type of stuff. So as much as you want to protect your IP, if someone in Japan or China or Vietnam decides to take everything that you've done and create it themselves, there's actually no real legal recourse that you can kind of take, which is not great, but yeah.
Okay. Now, what happens like if, you know, your IP does get stolen within those countries that, so like Australia, the UK, and US?
Yeah, so usually it's the first point is to send out what they call a cease and desist letter. So that letter will outline the breaches you feel that they've made. So, you know, if they're producing a book that's called the Xtreme Champion Tournament, it's got a very similar logo and it's got the same main character, then I'll put in a letter saying, look, can you please cease and desist? This is owned and trademarked by myself, or might not be trademarked but just copyrighted. This is copyrighted by Comics to Movies. Can you cease and desist and stop selling any of your works? And then after that, there would be a look. If you don't do that, then there may be legal recourse from there. If they 9 times out of 10, a letter is kind of enough to deter people. But if it's not, then it goes down the avenue of you're having to pay a lawyer to send them an actual legal letter, and then all the proceeds that go through after that.
Okay. Yeah. Have you had to actually deal with all this kind of stuff before?
I have. So I used a contract off the internet. So I had a contract off the internet, and it was just the wording that got me into trouble. So it didn't stipulate recommended retail price versus wholesale price when printing books. So then when I went through the whole distribution model and found out how much the distributor takes, how much the wholesaler takes, and then what you're left with, I found that the royalty payment that I was going to pay was actually higher than what I was actually getting. So it actually cost me money to print the book. I made absolutely nothing. I actually lost money on it. So then there had to be that whole recourse of trying to change that contract, and because I used it a couple of times, then that opened up a lot of issues in regards to going, well, the first time you can say it's a mistake, but you've now got a second or third or fourth or whatever contract. This is in all of them. So it cost me quite a bit in the end, but I've now got a really good entertainment lawyer. So they deal with movies, books, and graphic novels and comics. So I've got a really good lawyer that now deals with that has, as I said before, built up a template for me to use. And then if I do have any questions, it's also great now to have someone to go back to say, okay, this has come up. What do I do in this situation? Or they're now asking for this. I actually don't mind giving it to them, but how does that work, and what implications does that have? If they decide to leave the project down the track or something like that. So.
All right. Recently, I was actually filing a comic under like the Creative Commons, so that way anybody can basically kind of do what they want with the characters or anything. Once something is created in the Creative Commons, I mean, is it possible to still like create something based off of that and make it your own and trademark that?
It makes it extremely difficult because once someone else has contributed to that creation, and this is where a lot of people don't understand the work for hire arrangement. So if you pay someone to do work for you, that's classified as work for hire, and you still own whatever they're creating. So even though they might have designed up your character and everything, if you've paid them money to say, hey, I've actually paid you for that design, that means you are giving me the IP and the right for that design. When there's no transfer of money and no contract in place, that means that person has not resigned the rights to you, which means at any stage, if you decided to do an anthology and you use their character in your anthology, but it's an actual different writer and a different artist that does that story, then they would have rights to make a claim off that character for the amount of pages that they're shown in that book. So it does open a lot of doors in issues around that. So and that's what we're saying. A lot of people, especially in the indie industry, we do anthologies to start getting our work out there. So you really want to make sure that when you're doing that you've got a contract that you've paid them, even if it's a really minimal amount, that you've paid that, and that they're clear and understands that as part of that contract that the IP and everything is yours and that stays with you. So.
Okay. Huh. That's
Food for
all.
thought.
Yeah. I'm just trying to like kind of figure out, I guess, kind of the next question. Hmm. So, do you have any stories that you can actually share with us about, no names or anything like that? Don't want to get anybody into trouble where, this kind of has all gone wrong.
Well, yeah. Well, you've had the big profile issues with with Spawn and I'm pretty sure it was with Spawn and Todd McFarlane.
Mm-hmm.
There's been other really big profile issues in the indie scene. You don't see it as much because a lot of us don't have the money to fight certain things. So you'll see more people walk away from projects. So I've had a good friend here in Australia that had signed on with a publisher. As part of that deal, they'd signed over the IP rights. So there is a difference between signing over the publishing rights and signing over your IP. So, for myself, we are opening up our publishing wing through Comics to Movies, but with that contract, it clearly states that the IP is left with the creator, and that it's just the publishing rights that is coming across to us. But a lot of people, they look through a contract, they're happy to sign with a fairly big company. They don't get the contract checked by a lawyer, and then when they go to start doing more stuff with their IP, then this publisher comes in and says, okay, no, we don't want you to do that, or that's not in our, what we are now thinking of the brand. So my friend actually stepped away from the IP for 3 years until the IP came back to him. So that was quite a difficult decision for him, and he had invested so much in a brand that he then couldn't do anything with for several years. So, and that's quite hard to then try and re-engage your audience when you've been away for 3 years, type of thing. So.
Okay. So I guess one of the questions I have is it deals a little bit with when you say you're taking a comic to print. Does that copyright usually protect you on the web as well? Like if you're turning it into a web comic, or is that a separate thing you have to add to it?
So no. So as soon as something is in print, that's classified as copyrighted. So as soon as you put it up on the web, again, usually in all of my PDF documents or anything like that, I've got the copyright statement in the title page of each of my comics. Look, if people are going to pirate and do things like that, they'll find a way to do something. And a lot of people have gone, I'm worried about sending out a PDF. And I'm like, I tell you what, if someone really wants to steal your comic, they'll scan the individual pages and create a PDF themselves. There's always ways of being able to do it. So you're not going to be able to stop that. So what you're really trying to stop is someone actually taking your story and your characters and then using them for their own gain. So that's the difference between pirating and actually copyright and someone breaching copyright and stealing from you. So it's where they're gaining out of it, and that's why you see a lot of like fan made films and these type of things that kind of get away with doing it, and that's because they're not actually making any money off it. So it's just for
Mhm.
the love of creating a fan fiction film or something like that. So Star Wars has always been really good in regards to, you know, they've even used some fan fiction characters in their books and series. A lot of people thought that might have stopped when Disney came along, but they seem to still be, you know, quite open for those type of fan fiction things. But I do know that Star Trek, there was one on Kickstarter that got taken down and everything because they were trying to do a fan fiction film. So just depends on how protective over your IP that you want to be. You know, so.
So what about taking a comic that's already like it's in the public domain at this point? Uh, I believe it was it Dynamite did that with a lot of their titles, like the old Daredevil and stuff like that. Um, because it's in the public domain, what about the news stories? Where does that kind of fit into the copyright laws?
So that all depends on the year it's published. So that's what's so important about putting the year on when it's published. So most copyright laws are for unless you sell them, are for the life of the author, and usually plus 20 years. And they call that the actual Mickey Mouse law
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't want to lose Mickey Mouse, which was supposed to come into the public domain in 2002, and it's actually now supposed to come into public domain in 2022, type of thing. So, and that's no, it's 70 years. Is it the life of the author 70 years? Life of the author
Yeah, I
20.
believe so. Yeah,
Is it
70.
70 years? Yeah,
Yeah.
70 years. Sorry. Yeah, I said 20, but 70. So that's something that you need to be really, really mindful of. And again, I would always refer back to going back to a lawyer and just, crossing all your T's, dotting all your I's, and making sure that before you put this out there, that you can't get yourself into any trouble. I've got a friend that's doing like a satire comic based on another character, and you know, one of the things that he's gone and done is actually go to a proper copyright lawyer and say, okay, this is what I'm doing, this is the story I'm telling, it's a takeoff of XYZ characters, you know, what can and can't I do, so that I don't get myself into trouble, so that if that letter does come, he can say, okay, tell you what, take it up with my lawyer. I've covered everything, and I know that I haven't broken any laws or anything like that.
Okay. So, yeah, even if it's just a blatant like ripoff, but I mean it's done in a satirical way, you still recommend going to get a lawyer and stuff.
I would, and it depends if you think you're only going to sell 10 comics. You know, does it really matter? Will that person see it? Probably not. But if you're talking about, like, you know, my XCT series has sold, you know, over 7,500 issues now. Now that's in quite a few different countries, seen by quite a few different people. If that's got into, you know, someone's hands that was like, hey, you know, that's that I did that, that's my character, you know, blah, 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 then that would open me up to a lot of, issues and everything. So I wanted to make sure that, when I did any of this, that, I always had grand goals of how much I was going to sell and what my reach would be. And that, you know, if anyone picks this up, that I wasn't going to get myself into trouble. You know, XCT is based around a lot of historical characters, but I did want to bring in some, characters that are around this time era. And, I did get information that without the actual person's consent or the family's consent, that you wouldn't be able to do it. So one person I wanted to bring in was Bruce Lee. So that was they're very protective of his IP. So I had steered away from bringing him into the XCT universe because Yeah, and I don't know if you know that they have actually sued a few people because his face and his IP and everything is actually owned by his family, so they've actually purchased his IP and that. So
See, I was under the impression that his like he doesn't have any more family, like they had all already passed on. But
yeah, whatever there's actual company name for it, and I'll probably need to Google it. But yeah, I don't know whether it was the latest series that has come out that caused a lot of issues or not. But yeah, again, it depends on how much money you've got to fight things as well. So if I got an email or a letter from, Disney or Marvel or someone like that, yeah, I would just cease and desist straight away. But if I got a cease and desist from someone that I'd never heard of, did a little bit of research, and I'm like, oh, who is this person? Well, then I would be more inclined to fight that or whatever after legal advice from my lawyer. And again, I do want to state that this is not legal advice. I do not have any legal qualifications or anything like
same
this.
here,
This
guys.
is just my personal opinion and my circumstances that I've had and what I believe may help people. So, but yeah, don't take my word as gospel, and don't take my word as the letter of the law. I'm no legal practitioner. I've only got to general knowledge of my understanding and my experiences within the industry.
So, what's it like actually trying to kind of extend the copyright and trademark and stuff to historical figures? I mean, yeah, you have Spartacus and stuff, but it's you have your own take on these characters.
So yeah, so that's where it gets really tricky. So Spartacus in himself cannot copyright. There's just no way
Mm-hmm.
for me to copyright. But Spartacus with the armor that he's wearing and the design that I've created can copyright. So if someone came along and went, I'm going to use his lion shield and the two snakes on his armor and all this stuff that we designed up, then we would be saying, well, hang on a sec. Yes, you can have a Spartacus in your story, but that Spartacus is the exact character design of our character. So that is what we can protect. So yeah, the actual characters themselves, I can't protect or stop people from using Spartacus or Lozon or these other historical characters.
Okay. So, I mean, how did you actually kind of fall into all this knowledge? You said, you're from the industry. You had a couple of pitfalls yourself. What finally convinced you? Okay, I do need to go see a lawyer about all this, and I need to have them write up the contracts.
Yeah, well, that was when I got into the issue with the pricing. When I went to start to collect my books together and start printing and distributing, that I realised that the contracts that I had in place were financially non-viable for me to continue producing any more books moving forward. So I was like, okay, I really need to go and see someone and have some legal advice in regards to how I can either get around these contracts or work with a person to edit these contracts or walk away from the property and totally do something new. So that was quite a learning experience. It was quite demoralizing and that, and I would never want anyone to kind of go through that when you've created something and then you hit such a roadblock, both financially and creatively, that you can't see a way forward type of thing. So, since I spoke to my lawyer, I've used him several times for different things, and it's been great to kind of get everything back on track and moving forward. And I just wish I'd kind of done that at the start, and saved up the money, invested in doing everything right from the start. But you learn from your mistakes, and that's another thing that I'm a firm believer on. You're never going to do everything right, so you just, as long as you don't keep repeating them. If I kept using that same contract, like, I would be in an absolute shocking spot now. But it's really that little bit of investment that I've now made has actually opened up other doors. So, as I said before, I've now got a joint venture contract. So that's helped me create another couple of series on top of my XCT. I've now got that publishing contract that we're going to start accepting submissions in February of next year. So, if I hadn't gone to the lawyer and I hadn't gone through that experience, I would not have, learnt all this other stuff and been able to expand further. So, and it's just about asking questions. Like, you don't really know what the right questions are. And we talked about this at the beginning. So, even if you feel silly asking a question, ask the question. So, like I was saying to my lawyer, going, I want to go into this project with someone. We're going to share the IP, but how does that work, type of thing. And then he's like, it's a joint venture contract. I'm like, okay, what's that? And then he explained what the joint venture contract is. So, but I wouldn't have known to ask for a joint venture contract with what that was. So I was just asking about, well, this is my situation. This is what I'm trying to do. Are there contracts or things in place or can you create a contract or something in place that will suit my needs? So, comics are quite unique in the fact of, there's so many people that work on a project. It's not like a novel where, you've got the writer and that's it, maybe a cover artist and an editor. Comics, you've got, a writer, you've got an editor, you've got a penciler, an inker on top of that sometimes, a colorist, a letterer, and then someone that might collect it all together. And then the publisher on top of that if you're not publishing yourself. So there's a lot of people in that process compared to other things. So, a lot of the contracts that have been written up for myself have been, really tailored to the comic industry and what specifically I need. So.
All right. So, okay. When you're actually, like you were saying before, everything you add to that trademark just kind of, adds extra cash to it. What about the stuff that you never even thought of? Like, I mean, you create the coolest comic ever, you put it out there, it's selling well, and all of a sudden you hear about XYZ, the Broadway musical. You're like, I never thought of musicals. What can you do at that point?
Yeah, see, with that, I have 100% no idea, because that's the thing when I was going through trademarks that I just totally didn't realize. I thought when you trademark something that just was a blanket trademark, a blanket, XCT that covers me for everything. Well, no, it doesn't. It's if it's in the publishing, it covers for any print media. So, anything in print. You were asking before about digital. No, even though if I've printed it, it didn't cover me digitally. That was another option. And then I was like, okay, well, merchandise, does that cover me for everything? Well, no, merchandise only covers, say T-shirts, toys, and everything like that. It doesn't cover prints, posters, and that was under something different. And then, video games, films, and that was under something again. And I was like, wow, this is like really, really complex. And, it was getting up, I kid you not, in Australian dollars to trademark XCT under about 3 or 4 different items was getting up to about $10,000. So Yeah, which is about, I'm guessing about $7,500 US. So that's a lot of money. And I'm like, okay, well, how much am I selling compared to, is that $7,500 a good investment to kind of trademark my stuff? And I'm like, okay, even at, as I said before, $7,500 books that I've sold, that $7,500 really isn't, that investment at the moment would probably be worthwhile. But if I was making $100,000 off my books, then then I definitely would do that. I would definitely go, okay, well, I'm making a certain amount of money off my books. I want to make sure that I'm protected everywhere, type of thing. So,
Okay. So when somebody like approaches you, you're a publisher with comics to movies. Somebody approaches you with like, here's kind of the submission packet and stuff like that. What's kind of your first reaction? I know like DC and Marvel, they kind of throw their hands in the air and back off, real quick. But
yes. So the reason why we're waiting until February even though I've got the publishing contract now, the reason why I'm waiting until February is to have submission guidelines. So that's, to kind of protect ourselves, that if we have a similar idea to someone else that has submitted and we've already got it in the works, and there's someone submits something that's of a similar idea, that we don't get or have any issues in regards to saying someone goes, they copied my IP, and part of the submission process will be that there is no recourse back on us. When you submit your project. Now, a lot of people feel okay with that, and a lot of other people are like, okay, I'm not going to submit my idea because they might steal it. Well, if you don't submit it and you don't do anything with it, well, then it's never going to get published. It's never going to go anywhere. So, you got to put yourself out there. There will be the horror stories, unfortunately. There'll be people that are dishonest and untrustworthy. I just try to make sure that I've got a really good track record, that I'm open, honest, and transparent with the whole process, that I'll answer any questions that anyone has around a contract or queries anything, and make sure that the creator feels really comfortable with signing the contract before they do that. And that's because I've been an indie creator myself. I've been on the other end of the stick, and I want to make sure that they know that I'm here to help and also get some financial gain out of it. I'm not going to be naive and say that I'm not going to get financial gain out of it. There's going to be financial gain, but to understand that with my knowledge and with my experience, that can fast track your publishing and your creative career than trying to do it all yourself again. So,
okay. So we've talked to other creators in the past that say this publisher, created this really great story, and somebody else comes along with like it's basically fan fiction that fits into that world, and this publisher liked it so much that they contacted and kind of brought him in and just kind of canonized it. Has something like that ever happened with like comics to movies or anything like that? Where
yeah. So actually, the guard design from my series XCT was actually from a cosplayer that I met in the US.
really?
I was in Texas doing a show called Comic Palooza. And this guy walked past, Chris, and he was in this awesome. It was a Spartan gear, but it was a futuristic one. He had a cannon on the shoulder. He had like a face shield rather than the open Spartan face shield and everything like that. And I was like, dude, I love this this design. I love this idea. I really want to put this design in my comic book. So, no one's picked up on it yet, but they do show up in issue 0, but they look totally different to every other issue. No one's ever come back or commented about that. That's the reason why. Like I'd done issue 0, and this guy came along, and he was just super, helpful. Was happy for me to use the design and everything like that. But I got some really good advice off the guy that created Mouse Guard, and said, don't think that you know everything. And that just be open to other people's ideas. And I really took that on board and on heart. So when people kind of, respond back after each issue, and they're like, oh, is such and such a character going in that direction because I can see what you're setting up. And I'm like, that wasn't what I was setting up, but I am now, type of thing. So that fan interaction I'm always really grateful for. And when I've done certain things, and I've I kind of add people's names into the back of we had a scene with all these vials in the background where all these different characters are going to be cloned, and I actually threw in a couple of people's names that have made suggestions throughout the series, type of thing. So when they kind of saw that, they were like, oh my god, that's awesome, thanks for just putting my name in there. Now it won't mean much to everyone else, but to those people that have been a part of the series and part of the fandom, it's fantastic. So I'm always open to that idea, and I do anthologies once every 2 years, and kind of let people just have a fun time in the XCT universe. So I've got one launching next year called XCT Monsters, and it's just based on all different monsters that are going to be in the XCT universe. So yeah.
And where are they going to be able to pick that up?
So we'll do a Kickstarter first to raise the print funds for that, and then after Kickstarter, we've got a distributor so they can get it from Amazon, Booktopia, the Book Depository, of course, Crypto Comics.
Hey, I like that.
And our first anthology is up in the Crypto Comics site as well. So if you're in there and you want to check it out, it is black and white, but we've decided to go back and do them all color. So we're going to go back and we'll do the most wanted anthology in color as well. But yeah, super proud of this book. It's pretty exciting. I've worked with a lot of different creators on this one, but we've got a story on Medusa, a story on Blackbeard. We've got Pegasus, Bigfoot, or the Sasquatch. We've got a couple of Cyclopses. I think that's about it. I think that's all I've got. Oh, and then we're just doing one final one up on a werewolf, so which is kind of cool as well.
So out of all this stuff, what's the one that kind of threw you for a loop the most? Like, really, we're doing this one?
There's a character or a monster in Australia called the bunyip. And
it's called what?
A bunyip.
Okay.
And it's kind of like a cross between a monstrous platypus and and maybe like a panther or a cat or something like that. It's a really weird looking monster, and it's really our one and only kind of mythological character in Australia type of thing. So it's based off an Aboriginal legend. But it was the guy that wrote that story just took a completely different take on that story than I was thinking. And at first, I wasn't sure whether I liked it or not, because I was like, wow, that is so different to what I was picturing. But then after a while, I fell in love with it because it was just so different. And I just think when people read it, They're just going to be like, what the is this? This is like nothing like what XCT is. And I thought that's what was really good and separated it from everything else. I want to do stuff different. I want it to feel like XCT, but I don't want people just to go, okay, I know what's coming. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. And then this is going to happen. That doesn't make it interesting for the readers. So to throw in a couple of curveballs like that is really cool.
That's awesome. Okay. I love it. All right, well, we're probably going to cut this one a little short, everyone. But Shaun, if you want to stay on after the chat, looks like we have some more comics. Of course, Fry would say that.
We might do that for our big backers, Andrew.
There you go. Put some money where your mouth is. I like that.
Pity I've already got the commentators in the book, or else I could have had them as Matt and Frey.
That'd be awesome.
Damn, missed my opportunity there.
Yeah, well, there's always the next issue, you know.
Although I did, after I made a comment on the CouchCon, I really want to do a superhero series called Mutton Chops with Jared now. I'm really keen on that idea. So.
That would be awesome. I would pay for that. That's all right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight, especially you, Shaun. It's always such a pleasure to have you. I mean, all the way from Australia. It's getting to be about 2:00 down there or something like that.
Yeah. It's still early afternoon, so I'll do a few more hours worth of work, and then might crack open a beer. It's going to be quite a warm day here, so yeah.
Warm day? Oh, it is freezing here. Lucky.
Yeah, it's going to be 30, which I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's going to be 30 degrees here, which is quite warm for us. So yeah.
Oh man, yeah, it's just cold. Look at the thermostat or the thermometer. Just like, nah, it's just cold. All right. Well, thank you again.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right. See you, everyone.